This series called Travel Light, as you think about Christmas, we want to help you just kind of get rid of some of the baggage you're carrying. You know, this time of year, this season, Christmas, holidays, it makes you think about all the stuff that you have. And what we want to do is take some of that baggage and travel light. Get rid of some of the stuff you've been walking around with and want to be able to help you do that in this series. The house that Aaron and I live in, we live in a log cabin, and we lived there for 7 years this year, which is the longest I've ever lived in one house in my entire life. I grew up in the military, so my dad, we're moving a lot every 2 years. We're constantly moving to a new place. And then, I've been in ministry, been a pastor, and a lot of times at churches, you move a lot too. So I've been doing a lot of moving a lot. The first half of our marriage, we've done a lot of moving. And I've noticed something like every time we move, it's a great opportunity to just throw stuff away that you don't need, you don't want to pack it, just get rid of it. Well, we've been here for 7 years, and I've noticed something like our attic continues to get more and more congested. I went up there the other day, there was someone living in it. It was wild, how much stuff there is in our attic now. And I get it, you have the things, you use this stuff every year, or we might need this. And my wife and I were just talking, we need to throw away some things. It is time to purge this attic. You know what I mean? It's that one time a year where our attic is needs to lock down because we need to purge that junk. It needs to get cleaned out. And the question to kick off this series that I want to share with you is simply this. Would you rather have more of what matters in life or more of what doesn't matter? This is one of those throwaway questions, all right? We all know the answer. We all are going to say, we want more of what matters. Case closed, we can go home. But the reality is, most of us actually live our lives towards living for more stuff that doesn't matter. We want more of what doesn't matter, and it's in the way that we live our lives, because our society is all about what we don't have, the thing that we know that we need. And this goes back to the very first humans that were ever created, Adam and Eve. They lived in a perfect world. God gave them everything and said, you can have it all except this one tree. We don't know what the fruit is. I think we won't find out until we get to heaven. And it's this one tree that God says, you can have anything here except for that. And Adam and Eve bought the lie that they needed that thing to make them happy. And I think that's true when it comes to you. Maybe in your marriage, you think, this marriage isn't working. I'm not happy. If I marry that person, then I'll be happy. If I just had that promotion, if I made more money, then I'll be happy. If we went on that vacation, if I had that house, if I had that car, if I had that thing, if my kids were like this, if they went to this school, then I'll be happy. If my team makes it into the college playoffs, then I'll be happy. We are still constantly wanting more. Solomon, the wisest person ever lived, said this in Ecclesiastes 4. He said, better to have one handful with quietness than two handfuls with hard work and chasing the wind. In other words, he's saying it's better just to have one hand of what you can have and having quietness, having gratitude, being thankful for what you have, than to have two hands full and constantly chasing after the wind. Some of us, in the way that we live our lives, we are chasing after the wind. We're pursuing the things that do not matter. Do you want more of what actually matters in life, or do you want more of what doesn't matter? Jesus was approached by two brothers. Their father had just passed away, and this father left an inheritance, and the two brothers were now disputing over the inheritance. They couldn't really, we don't know if they cared about their dad or whatever. They were just saying, Jesus, our dad left us some money. You tell us who gets it. And Jesus literally says this to them in Luke 12, and he says, beware, guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own. got to watch out for greed. Greed is the cancer to the soul. And in our culture, we live in a greedy kind of society. Do more, have more, be more, have more followers, do all the right things, go to all the right places, have the right stuff, buy the right things, more, more, more. And this whole time of year is about having more. Christmas is all about more, and the more you have, the more that you want, more of the things, more of the money, more of the stuff. And we know family is important. We say it, we understand it, we get it, but yet we still live with this idea of having or needing more. I want to kind of help you travel light, and today we're going to look at 3 quick thoughts of one handful living. We're calling it one handful living, and it'll be 3 quick things. The first one is this, is to throw out. If you want to live like Solomon says, one handful with quietness, having peace, having gratitude, not having to worry about all the stuff, then the first thought is to simply just throw out. Let's do an honest life assessment really quickly, just like in your own heart, in your brain. Like take an honest assessment of your life right now. How much stuff do you really have? Like, do you have a garage that you can't even park your cars in because your stuff has filled it up? Do you have a bunch of storage units with your stuff, right? I think the show American Pickers, it really should just be closet hoarders. You know what I mean? Like, these are people that have so much things because it might be worth money. How is your attic? What is the things? What are your closets like? How much stuff do you really have? Maybe it's time to throw some of it out. Get rid of the stuff you don't need. As a matter of fact, there was a young man who was very wealthy. He approached Jesus and he said, "Hey, Jesus, I want to follow God with everything that I am, but I feel like there's a disconnect between me and God. I don't know what I'm doing. And then so Jesus tells him, hey, love the Lord your God, and he basically kind of gives him the 10 commandments. And this guy says, Jesus, I've been doing all of that. I am very religious. I do all the right things. I am checking all the boxes, but I still feel like my connection to God is missing. And then Jesus says this to him in Matthew 19, well, if you want to be perfect, and we're not using the word perfect like as in like never make mistakes. In other words, he's like, if you truly want the connection with God, if you want the peace that's missing in your heart, he says, go and sell all your possessions. Give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me. But when the young man heard this, he went away sad, for he had many possessions. See, Jesus, in his sovereignty and knowing everything, understood this man's heart. He knew this guy's story. This guy had a lot of things. And the reason why this man could not have that connection to God is because number one in his heart was all of his stuff, all of his money, all of his things. There's nothing wrong with having nice things. God blesses us with those things so that we can enjoy those things. Nothing wrong with having a nice house or car. Nothing wrong with any of it. The problem for most of us is we are owned by our stuff. A lot of you might have it. It might be yours. But until you pay that thing off, it does not belong to you. It belongs to Lowe's. It belongs to Ashley Furniture. It belongs to whatever car company that you bought your vehicle from. Until you own it and you're not paying for it, it does not belong to you. Most of us are owned by our stuff, and we will say things like, I don't need this to be happy. But the reality is we hold on to things because they do make us feel happy. Why do we hold on to our stuff? Sometimes we're fearful, right? Maybe it's, I might need this, right? My kids might want this. No, they don't. But you think it, like, my kids might want this. I don't want to be wasteful. I'm a resourceful person, right? And so you don't want to get rid of things or throw them out. And just think about, we just did this recently, earlier this year. We went through all of our dishes and all of our appliances, all the things that we have, and we just filled up this table, and we just got rid of or gave away, just tons of things we never knew. You know, you have like that plate, this obscure plate that you use like once every 5 years that fits the one theme for that one time, for this one place, for this one moment. You're like, there's that plate. You got to take it out and it's dirty because you never get, you don't need it anymore, right? You don't need it anymore. If God provided it to you before, then trust that he'll provide it to you again. A couple years ago, I started doing this because my wife is really great at this. And so I started doing, anytime I got something, I got rid of that same thing. So if I bought a new shirt, I would get rid of another shirt. So if I got a t-shirt, I got rid of a t-shirt. If I got like a button down, I would get rid of a button down. If I get a new jacket, I got rid of a jacket. New shoes, get rid of a pair of shoes. And so I kind of keep the same amount of things to not get so bogged down with having so much stuff. It's okay, you don't need to have all your stuff. Some of us are thinking about our closets right now, and you forget about some of the things that you actually have in your closets. Hey, it's a good time to get rid of some of that stuff. Another reason why we don't want to get rid of it is sentimental value, right? It means something to you, right? There's this thing, I can't get rid of this thing. And it's like this weird little, figurine that someone bought for you that one time, and it was really special at that time. And you're like, this means a lot to me. And it's like, but it's really like nothing, just collecting dust. You don't have to hold on to it. It's okay to thank that thing for its purpose and then give it to someone, or just get rid of it. If you want one handful living, it's time to start throwing out. Here's the second thing you do is to buy less. I know. Buy less. Here we are in the time of year where it's not about buying less, buying more. Did you know, retail therapy is a real thing? Did you know that? They said, there are studies, countless studies that show 60% of Americans instantly feel better the moment they buy something. Because you feel good, you buy that new thing, you're like, I know I look good in this thing, right? Or whatever it is, you feel good about it. It's the dopamine hit. Your brain's like, I like that. I like the way that feels. You know, when you got that thing, you just feel so good about it, and we love it. Psalm 119, the psalmist writes this: give me an eagerness for your laws rather than a love for money. God, I want to love you more than I love money. Turn my eyes from worthless things and give me life through your word. We don't need more stuff. We need more God. We need more of him, and we understand that most of the stuff we're buying, it's going to break down anyways. We're not going to keep it forever, and that's what we try to do. I don't want a bunch of stuff that I have to throw out. I don't want a bunch of stuff where one day my kids are going to have to go through and be like, gee, thanks, Dad. You kept all this junk that we're just literally going to sell in this all sell all, and people are going to buy it for pennies on the dollar. Thanks for leaving us with that. That's what we're saying. And so as our kids get older, Aaron and I want to understand, there are different phases of parenting here. If you have little kids toddlers and under, all they need is a box or a bag, right? That's all they're going to play with anyways, all right? They will care more about the box that thing came in or the bag than they are going to care about that stuff. But as our kids have gotten older, one of the things that we've tried to do is to focus more on experiences as a family. Hey, what's something we can do as a family? Because an experience is something that will stay with you forever. So our family loves national parks. We love going to them. We love using those opportunities. So we use our money to do stuff like that throughout the year. This year we got to go to Yosemite and Sequoia National Park. It was just incredible. Last year we got to go on a huge trip. We got to go to Glacier and Yellowstone and the Tetons. And it was just this amazing experience that we got to have. And it's because we said, we don't need to focus on so much stuff. Let's give something to our kids to actually make memories that hopefully one day they will pass on and give to their kids. They don't need more of the stuff. And one of the things that we used to do in terms of buying less, we several years ago when our kids were smaller, we did the 5 gift rule. We did 5 things, and it was something you want, something you need, something to wear, something to give, And there's a fifth one. You'll have to ask my wife, but there were 5 of them, right? We had 5 things. Like, you get these 5 things, and it was so much less pressure. You know, like our kids, like, they didn't expect it, you know. They didn't do all these things. Like, hey, that was it, and that was good enough. But now that they're older, we focus on doing things that we can't share in those moments, and that's just having those experiences. Those last a lifetime. Those last a lifetime, and so that's been something that we've been doing. And honestly, hey, buying less is gonna help you out more this year. Here's the last thought, is to give more. To give more. I know this is kind of crazy, it's the backwards, but I love what it says. Paul writes this young pastor, Timothy, and he wanted to make such an impact on him. He actually writes him 2 letters, but in the first letter, he writes to him in 1 Timothy 6, he says this, teach those who are rich in this world not to be proud and not to trust their money, which is so unreliable. Follow the stock market lately, right? Their trust should be in God, who richly gives us all we need for our enjoyment. Tell them to use their money to do good. They should be rich in good works and generous to those in need, always being ready to share with others. By doing this, they will be storing up treasure as a good foundation for the future so that they may experience true life. I love that when you think through it. And really, honestly, if Paul were to write this today, he could be writing to Americans because we are rich. As a matter of fact, the average Americans, if you're to take it, depending on how much you make, we are in the top 5 to 7% richest people in the entire world. The richest people in the entire world live in America. As a matter of fact, if you eat 3 meals a day, and some of you are like, oh, I don't only eat 2 meals, I skip breakfast, whatever. If you have the ability to eat 3 meals a day, just by the simple fact of you being able to eat 3 meals a day, it puts you in the top 40% richest people in the entire world just by having 3 meals a day. We are crazy rich people. So you know what that makes me? A crazy rich Asian. I mean, that's low-hanging fruit. You got to take stuff like that. Hope they come out with a second movie, right? We are crazy rich. And what Paul is saying, he says, don't trust your money. He says, don't feel guilty. For those of us that live on God's economy, it's like, hey, we live on 90%. We can do whatever we want. We give 10% to God, and we can do whatever we want to with the 90% that we have. And so use that for your enjoyment. But at the same time, Paul says, use your money to do good. Fight the urge this year maybe to max out your credit cards. I'm telling you, you don't need to do it. Like, some of us want to be able to do good, but we can't because most of us are living paycheck to paycheck, or we're stressing about what we're gonna do for Christmas this year because we're worried about our kids and what we're gonna provide or don't provide. But let me just share with you a little secret. Your kids will not resent you because you didn't buy them a bunch of stuff. Where are the toys you bought them last year? Exactly. You don't know either. It may already be thrown away. It's probably gonna break within the first month or after a week of them playing this thing they just so desperately wanted. They're gonna forget about it because it'll be on to the next thing. They don't actually need it. They don't actually need it. And you're teaching your kids like, hey, life is more than the things that we have and the stuff that we have. Or maybe it's time, like, you teach your kids at a young age, hey, there are kids that don't have. Let's go through some of these toys that you do have. Some of us have entire rooms in our houses that's just a playroom, nothing but toys. Let's just give that maybe to some other people. We don't need to have it. You're never gonna hear stories, and some of you, like, I've never heard a story. Someone's like, you know what? Christmas of 92, my parents really just skimped out on me. So mad. I'm still mad to this day. 2023, Christmas of 92. No one does that. I've not heard of stories of regret in those ways. And yet at the same time, I've never heard anyone regret giving more to somebody else either. I've never heard that either. A few years ago, we have a missionary in our church, Alan Ruth McClellan, and they reach pastors on the island of Indonesia. And Ruth, she has Parkinson's. She came and she shared this powerful story about how she threw away a 10-year-old pair of Nike shoes that were garbage. They were tore up, and people were fighting over them, and it was just this whole ordeal. And from that, we started this thing called Ruth's Shoes, and we have given thousands and thousands and thousands of pairs of shoes away on the island of Indonesia to people who have never heard the gospel. And that year, I was so moved by that. I took all of the money that I normally would spend on myself for Christmas, and I gave it all for those shoes that year. I wish I would have spent some of that on myself. No, I don't think that at all. I didn't miss anything. I didn't want for anything. And I'm just telling you, like, I've never had a moment where I'm like, you know what, we gave to that. Why would we do that? You know, our Christmas project this year, we're helping a couple out of our church. Their families based out of our church. They're in the mountains of East Asia. And part of the thing that we're doing for our Christmas project this year is helping provide children to have prosthetics who don't have any opportunity to have prosthetics. You're probably going to regret giving to that one day. You know, like, remember that year we gave to those kids with prosthetics? Like, look what we could have done instead for ourselves. No one says that. No one has a story where they regret giving to somebody else. And that's what we're talking about in terms of giving more. Use these as opportunities to do some inventory in your own life to say, all right, God, what can we do? What can we do? Like, do I need to start throwing some stuff out? Do we need to maybe buy less? Maybe like we need to tone it down. And you know what, some of you, that might help like alleviate some pressure for Christmas this year. Like, hey, maybe we don't have to do so much. What if we did something else? Maybe you say, hey, this year, let's give more. Let's do one of the things where we actually give more. And you learn, like it says in Ecclesiastes, better to have one full of quietness than two handfuls with hard work and chasing after the wind. This is that time of year in our society where people are chasing after the wind. And if we're not careful, we teach our kids to chase after the wind. When you have the opportunity to go a new path, to set a new direction and say, hey, we were doing this and we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to focus on something else. Let's focus on what's more important. We say we want more of what's really important, then let's actually take steps to doing what's really important over the things that aren't. So what is it for you? Do you need to throw some things out? Like say, hey, you know, this is a great opportunity to give some of that away. Do you need to maybe buy less? Maybe say, you know, we don't need to do so many things. Hey, what if this year we just went on that place together as a family? What if we did that? What if we went to a place we would never go to because we didn't do so much for Christmas this year? Maybe for you it's, hey, I need to give some more. Like, I want to look for an opportunity to be able to do for people that cannot do for themselves. It's time to stop chasing the wind. Hey, and this year experience what it means to travel light.